I'm Stephen John Drew from Better Podcasting, a podcast about podcasting, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find fantastic geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
I am the Green Arrow.
The Green Arrow has entered through the front door.
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Welcome back to Earth 2's favorite newspaper. We love to call it the Starling Tribune. I am the chief editor. My name is SP, and your other award-winning reporters for this episode number 235 of the Starling Tribune are Chris.
You are lucky I am a reformed assassin.
Yeah, I don't feel like getting killed tonight. And Michelle.
I take my porn very seriously.
Watching it on a typewriter as always, right, Michelle?
I do too.
Exactly.
Everyone, this podcast is recorded on Thursday, April 4th, 2019, live on www.geeks.live.
That's right, and this evening we'll be discussing Legends of Tomorrow, as well as news, interviews, articles, and announcements that have dropped in the past week that could, and let's be honest, will impact things like Legends of Tomorrow, The Flash, Supergirl, Arrow, and the rest of the DC television universe.
If you're new to the show, thank you for searching us out on the internet and joining us. After the show, you can check out our content at GonnaGeek.com, where you can also find other geeky videos, podcasts, and articles.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be back talking about Legends of Tomorrow. And since that's where we're going, Michelle, why don't you break down the episode for us?
Sure thing. This episode is called Tagumo Attacks. It's season 4, episode 5. It aired Monday, November 19th, 2018. It's directed by Alexandra LaRoche. Credits include 3 Legends, 4 Flash, 2 Arrow, 1 Supergirl, and 2 Eureka. Written by Kido Shimizu. Credits include 13 Legends, 11 Arrow, and 1 Flash. And Ubay Muhammad. Credits include 5 Legends, 1 Arrow, and 2 of the Whispers.
This episode aired back in November. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the DC shows that aired that week, and we're going to go over the live plus 7-day DVR numbers. So this will be a little bit different from when we covered Arrow Due Process in the fall. So Sunday, 18 November, Supergirl aired the 6th episode of the 4th season. Call to Action was the title of the episode, to a total rating of 2.12. Monday, the 19th of November, Arrow aired the 6th episode of the 7th season, titled Due Process, to a total rating of 1.81, getting close to that 2 mark for the 7-day rating. Following Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow aired this episode to a total rating of 1.75. I can't wait to talk about it. It's a really fun episode. And following Legends of Tomorrow on Monday, Tuesday, The Flash aired the 6th episode of the 5th season, The Icicle Cometh. And it has nothing to do with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just wanted to say it that way. To a total rating of 3.27. And following that, Black Lightning aired the 6th episode of the 2nd and possibly final season. We'll find out that soon. To a total rating of 1.78. Guys, on a grandiose scheme, these ratings seem a little bit low for Live Plus 7, but I'm just glad to see them close to 2 rather than closer to 1.
Yeah, me too. That's awesome.
It is November. It's getting close to Thanksgiving. So maybe people are waiting to catch up.
That's not a bad idea. That's entirely possible.
A lot of finals or midterms going on at school, and a lot of people getting ready to travel for Thanksgiving, because a lot of people did. This was one of the years in 2018 where you had a record number of people on the road. So I can definitely see that. And yeah, also, I want to note that even though we are in April of 2019, I watched this on the CW app because we had that long hiatus, and it wasn't even the oldest episode in the stream. It was the 2nd oldest episode on the stream. So it was good to watch it on the CW app.
I still have my sorry, go
DVR.
ahead.
I still have mine on my DVR.
I did the same thing. It was still on the DVR, so I just came home and pushed play on there. I didn't even think about the CW app just because I hoard some of these shows on my DVR. I have a problem. I don't like to delete, guys. I got a problem.
I've got 5 saved from this season of Arrow on there.
Damn.
I know. Well, there's been a lot of good ones. Star City 2040. You had I forget, was the Slab Slide Redemption, and there's a couple of good ones. This Beth Schwartz has been doing a great job, and I can tell by the number of episodes I've saved on the DVR, but that's taking up space. I will be saving the rest of the Legends of Tomorrow because I don't know when it'll drop on Netflix, and we'll be covering it after Arrow completes. All right, enough with that, how we watched it in the ratings back in November. It's time to actually get into this great episode. And we often start talking about the episode by talking about the theme of the episode. And we attribute the theme to the title, which I think is very appropriate for this episode. So what do you got for us, Michelle?
Well, it's the name of the creature that, the filmmaker creates. And originally it's supposed to be just for a movie. But because of that diary, the creature actually becomes living and it attacks Tokyo in that, great Godzilla-esque way. You have the little models and the people, in the costume and everything. It was just great to see something like this.
Felt very Godzilla-esque or like early Power Rangers-esque, where that's the exact same kind of filming technique they used to film all the creature battles there.
It was fun to watch, especially when you had the dinosaur or the monster, the sea creature, big octopus really, with the triple-breasted woman from Mick. Mick's got quite the imagination there. He's thinking about going for 4. I think he can stick to 3. What do you think, Chris?
I think that's fair. 3 is more than enough.
Mm-hmm.
I did also enjoy with this how they also changed the opening credits so that they're in Japanese for this week.
I know.
And an homage to these kind of stories that you would get in the Godzilla-esque fashion.
It looked like a Japanese anime. I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to watch this with subtitles? I'm glad I didn't.
So here's the question. I don't know about you guys. I don't speak nor do I read Japanese. Do you guys?
No.
Hopefully, if you're listening to this show and you speak or read Japanese, you can tell us whether that was an accurate translation or what it translates back into. I mean, I guess I could try and throw it at Google and see what happens, but I'm not sure how that would work.
I don't even know how to type the symbols in.
I mean, you could probably use Google Goggles or something like that.
I think it's probably accurate considering the backlash they could have instantly gotten.
Oh, I
if
do
it
too.
was wrong.
It's more I was wondering what, if anything, would get lost in translation, how it would come across differently. I wasn't trying to come after and be like, oh, they're going to screw it up. It was more like, it may not be 100% able to translate, so I wonder what it translates into.
I can't imagine them screwing it up because they do have enough people on staff like Kido Shimizu and I believe Kevin Takeron who have Asian history in their past.
It's true.
I think what Chris is talking about is that sometimes there's not a direct translation between an American title and like what it gets translated into. And there are so many examples and none of them are coming to my brain right now about how like it's like something is called like this, but it's just not a direct translation. So it just ends up being like, something different. I think that's what Chris is talking about.
Yeah,
like,
it's almost along the lines of what gets jokingly called English, how it gets translated back in. One of the things you see it a lot in is if you're familiar with the meme of all your base are belong to us from the old Sega, what was it? It was a Mega Drive game or something in the early 90s called Zero Wing, which is arguably one of the worst translations ever from Japanese to English. I'm just kind of curious whether everything fully translates back and forth or not on that. That's all. It's a completely non-essential part of this episode. It's more Chris just indulging his idle curiosity right here.
Okay, so before we get fans like really lambasting me, I have to qualify what I said. So Kido Shimizu, her dad is an Asian art historian. So I know this because Kido has definitely done a lot of great episodes and I've actually done some research on her. So I know that. And then Kevin Takeron, I know from their past has had production in the Japanese, well, not Japanese, but in the Asian area because of the past with him and his sister, Mo Takeron. So that's what I meant about that. I didn't mean that either grew up in Japan or anything like that. So just had to qualify that. All right. So Michelle, what do we got next? We got some time travel?
Yes, we have 1951 Tokyo, and then we have two places in the present, DC and Reston. I actually would like to talk about DC first because this is the Thanksgiving episode, kind of. And you have Hank inviting Nate to Thanksgiving, and they learn that Ava doesn't have anywhere to go because she actually, she gets invited. Gary ends up having to work the Thanksgiving shift, which comes later on. And Ava's all into it because she's like, my family were actors, but I really haven't had that true quintessential American Thanksgiving dinner. And I don't come from a large family. So this whole like kids running around, people getting drunk, I've only seen stuff like this on television. Have any of you two ever had a Thanksgiving dinner like this?
Not with the delayed food, but the pandemonium at a relative's house. Yes. Well, when I was growing up, we went to my grandparents' house at the farm. And ultimately, I think a couple of years, there was 150 relatives that were there. They ate it in shifts. Everybody was there for the immediate family for the lunch, and then dinner, other people came by, and it was just an annual tradition. But then, the whole shopping thing cut into everything. But yes, there was pandemonium. There was lots of card playing and drinking and stuff like that. So yeah, I've actually experienced many holidays like this.
I have as well, not to the size that SP is describing. It was maybe like 25 people max, something like that. But yeah, putting everyone in one place, trying to have everything going on, multiple turkeys being cooked, a ham, all sorts of stuff, and just pandemonium. Now the thing was, I was in my 20s and I was still the young side of the crowd there. I was still relegated to the children's table at 20, which was strange. Oh, well,
No.
what can you do?
I would relegate you to the kids' table today, Chris.
Oh, but okay.
But there's more fun at the kids' table.
Not really. I wasn't allowed to have my beer at the kids' table.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you were 20.
I was in my 20s. I'm pretty sure I was of age. Let me put it that way. I remember being in college and some post-college moments of that. So I was of age.
Did you take a Coke and maybe spike it with something?
That was at Christmas time, my friend.
Okay.
Well, Gary ends up having to work, and he ends up we get Mona again, and he sets up a date that he's going to have to flash her later on, which sounds very awkward and everything. And because the episode starts out, Ava is justifying the money that Hank gave them and everything. And they're talking about the containment units. And when the food comes, everyone wakes up. And I'm thinking, so they thought to trank them, but they didn't think to feed them. Who should we blame for this? Ava?
Ultimately, the boss is responsible when things like that happen. Now, it was one of her people that probably missed it, but technically she's the director, so it's on her. Especially when the big boss is there going, wait, what? What's going on?
They are dealing with unknown entities, so they're experimenting with what works and what doesn't work. However, just leaving Gary in charge of everybody is never a good idea.
Unless you want comedy.
Which we get.
This is true.
A lot. It was a good episode. Very comedic.
Well, Mona gets a job out of it.
Which is awesome for her, but I'm not sure if it's awesome for Gary, because what are the fraternization rules in the Time Bureau?
That's a good
Are
question.
there any?
I don't know. There very well could be. I mean, if there are, I guess it'd be problematic for Ava and Sarah as well. But the Legends, I think of more of kind of like free agents that just kind of occasionally work with the Bureau. It's best not to try and put them under the banner.
No, I was going to say it's more akin to bounty hunter than anything else.
Well, and technically, Ava and Sarah are of like equal rank within the organization because they're both directors and they're not the boss of each other.
I think Sarah is. I think the Legends are part of the Time Bureau, or they're at least sanctioned by the Time Bureau, right?
Correct.
So I think that Ava is her boss. Sexual harassment.
I think it's all consensual in this case.
Yeah, that's fine. You just never, as Chris pointed out, you never know what the actual rules are of fraternization within the organization. So it's a legitimate question that I think is glossed over because plot, as Neil would always say.
Well, we know Mona's not going to get flashed anymore.
Flashy thingied, not flat. Oh my gosh. Sounded better in his head, I think.
True. And also in the present, we have Ray and Nora. And have either of you ever been to a Ren Fair?
Yes.
Yes.
The whole SP, what did you think of Ray coming in and kind of like saving Nora?
Yeah, he kind of did, but I think the guy was being a little aggressive. Right? The guy in half chainmail and a chainmail Dickie, basically. And
Yes.
Ray took his phone. I was looking at this. I watched that part twice. Ray took the guy's phone and crushed it. And then he took his sword and used the sword to push him out of the tent. That's pretty aggressive. I think the guy actually could sue Ray over all that.
But you got to find him to be able to serve him, and that's a hard thing to do when you're traveling through time randomly.
True, but that's not. I mean, Ray's trying to be noble, but at the same time, he's breaking a lot of rules.
Yes, what he's doing there, it's the thing you see all the time, the typical trope of rush to defend, but don't think of the consequences. And what you're doing is arguably not necessarily good either. I understand the intent behind his actions, but taking and breaking someone's phone, those things are worth $1,000 or more at some point in time. So I'm sure that qualifies for a level of crime you don't want.
Also, what kind of strength does normal Ray have in order to pulverize a phone with his fist? Can you do that, Chris?
Well, I don't really want to try with any of the phones in my house, but if you guys want me to try, send me a phone and I'll try and crush it on screen.
What kind do you want? You want an iPhone 6 Plus? Do you want
Preferably not
iPhone?
glass back so that I don't get glass slivers in my hand.
Well,
he
they're
did
all-
say it was Palmer Tech and that the hardware wasn't all that. Like, he actually blamed the phone.
That's true.
He's Palmer and he's saying that his technology isn't made very well. Look at, I could crush it in my little bitty hands.
I'm surprised they're still out in the wild. They should have been discontinued a year ago or so.
But I think it shows just how, when Ray sees her for the first time, right, Chris, he kind of,
The
like, she
slow-mo.
glows for a little bit, right,
You have
Chris?
that trope where he's just smitten yet again and you get the slow-mo kind of thing. And yeah, they set it up.
And the two of them knowing that they're married in real life and just seeing them meet in this awkward situation and it's funny watching them interact with each other because not only do they have acting training, but they've been married to each other for several years. I can't remember how long they've been married, but you're seeing that interaction between them on camera and you're just kind of wondering how much of that is their real life and how much of that is acting.
Well, they have great chemistry. So I think probably the acting on it is the resisting of kissing each other.
That very well could be, yeah.
Yeah, maybe they do in some outtakes. Who knows?
So, Chris, what did you think of Ray and how he helped Nora see her magic differently?
It follows with what we know of Ray. He's eternally positive. He doesn't see the dark side of things, and he's always looking on the bright side. So it doesn't have to be a dark thing. Him saying those kind of things fits in with what we've learned from this character. He's overwhelmingly positive. And it's kind of nice to see her make that realization also that, yeah, just because Dad was evil doesn't necessarily mean magic is evil.
I like the reference to her dad because it's been a while since we've seen Damien, and probably, I don't know if we'll ever see him on the screen again, but it is always good to think of Neil McDonough, because no matter how we might cry about how he was used in that last season of Arrow or anything, Damien Dark, played by Neil McDonough, he's an incredible actor, and all the good things come up to my mind. I just watched Captain America, the First Avenger, a little while ago, and he plays Dum Dum Dugan in that, and that's always fun. And Band of Brothers, he's been in a lot of stuff, but those are some of the things that I always remember him from. And just by her saying the dad, that all those visions came to my head, not the bad stuff that I remember from Arrow, but all the good stuff. So that's good. I mean, there was some good definitely some good performances for him in Arrow, but season 4 was a bit rough.
That's fair.
Do we think it's believable for her to turn herself in then?
Yes. I mean, they sort of hinted at it as that there would be a redemption path, and for her to redeem herself, the only way to do it is to stop having to run. So I get it. And you could argue that Ray has been a positive influence on her from the time that she was a time-displaced child to the time that she's a grown adult. And that makes it sound creepy, I just realized.
She's been on the run for a little bit, so she wants to take responsibility for everything, and she wants to try to move on with her life. I think she realizes that she can't hide in the shadows forever.
I also believed it. I like how she brought them to the time Vera on her own, and Ray's like shocked because he's like, no, I told you to run. And she gives him the stone, and she just went, no, this has to stop. I have to start, taking responsibility for my actions.
Right. And what Ray had been talking about was taking responsibility for things and how things can be positive. And if you're still running and always hiding, can't really do that. So I think it makes sense from a storyline and a character progression standpoint that she would hand herself in.
Our main story is about, of course, takes place in Tokyo, 1951. And our main story kind of does two things. One, it has Charlie working with the team for the first time. And also, someone else kind of has to come out of hiding. And that is, of course, our favorite, Mick. Zari really is the only one that knows that he is a writer. And she actually has to tell him, I've read it. It's actually pretty good. But he doesn't want anyone to know.
Well, it doesn't fit with his tough guy image.
This was a little bit of backtracking in storyline, because the whole author thing had come out last year. And although we haven't heard about it since, we know that's what he's been doing in his free time. So for him to continue to hide it from the current people on board the well, okay, hold on. Let's take a step back. He came out, we learned that he was an author in that time, what do you call it? Shift, round, whatever
loop
episode.
Yep.
Yeah, time loop episode. And so, yeah, nobody else knew except for Zari.
Right?
Okay.
Because Nate knew, and then the ship blew up, and that Nate no longer exists. So Zari's the only person that knows, and like she said, could have read his work.
Okay. So do I buy it? Yeah, I do buy it. But it's good that it's coming out in the open now. Okay. I'm remembering. It's hard to remember where you are in the story when it's been 5 months since you saw this thing. So.
And time travel makes additional complexities.
True. So yeah, I'll believe it. And I also believe that he's a little bit bashful. But now that it's out in the open and that he used his talent to save the world, I think it's good to go from now on. Question though, I don't remember. Was he wearing his gloves when he was writing with
Yes.
the pen? Okay.
Yeah, because they have to redo his makeup if he takes his gloves off, is how I've always looked at it.
What did we think of Charlie working? I mean, she of course kind of had her moments with Sarah, a little headbutting. Of course, she also drank Sarah's whiskey, which is a no-no.
That's blasphemous right there.
Well, it's not like you can't have Gideon make some new one. And it looked like standard Jameson to me.
But it could have been a gift. You don't know.
It's fair.
Could have been the last of what Rip Hunter got for her. And he is dead.
So we think.
Yeah, I was going to say, you and I went to the same path there, we think.
But I like that Charlie comes on board because she doesn't want fugitives to just be tossed back into prison for no reason whatsoever other than they're fugitives. She actually wants fugitives to be given a chance.
Well, I think that's the whole concept behind the redemption. I mean, that's the whole concept behind the team taking her in. Not only is she useful, but they are thinking in terms of redemption. It's almost like the any standard bad guy that is redeeming themselves in this whole DC verse. And Flash comes to mind from several angles, but I don't disagree with how it's handled within the show, and I think it's kind of unique. The only thing in this case, though, is we're seeing the same actor in a same face in a different role, and this is still new in that. This is what, the third episode in that she's on?
Yes. Second one on the ship, third episode in.
Yeah, so everything's kind of brand new, but she is proving her worth. I mean, she goes toe to toe with the creature. That was awesome. Outside, when they were making it smaller, she tricks it into hitting the power lines.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that took some guts.
And she also has knowledge. Like, she knew right away that the book was from a Celtic goddess of creation, that it bonds with creative types, and that the book itself isn't evil. It's the person who's using it. The way they use it determines, which I liked, because, sometimes an object is just an object. The user dictates its trajectory.
Right. Without Nate on the ship, there's nobody there to Nate-splain things, and this fits right in. If she has a unique perspective on these magical items and creatures, she can give that Nate-splaining to the crew and therefore the audience. So I think it's working out fine with Nate off the ship.
Yeah, I have to admit, I haven't missed him off on the ship. I know Ray does, but I'm not. What about you, Chris?
I miss the Nate and Ray interaction, but I don't necessarily miss the way Nate was involved in explaining everything. I think you get a bit more organic explanation of things and a bit more fun to it. And I kind of enjoyed having this week Nate with Ava doing something different. It was a different mix of things. So count me as some of the people that don't really miss Nate on board the ship.
And Nate's got this whole thing going on with his dad off in DC, and that's fun to watch. The one thing that I didn't like about that whole storyline is exactly what happens at the end of the episode, where you have Nate's dad calling somebody and say, "We could use this to our event. We could make a weapon out of this. Project Hades, right? Project Hades. Here's a go." And I was like, oh, I don't want to see him as a bad guy. And as we found out, that is kind of what they were thinking at this point in time. More on that later.
It makes sense. I mean, he does work for the Pentagon, to see some sort of, resource angle.
Right. So there was a story that came out this past week, and I noticed it wasn't in the news. So do you mind if I talk about it?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So there's a story came out from the writers from the show that said Tom, who's the actor that plays Nate's dad, he was being cast and put in the story as a bad person. And you can definitely see it at the end of this episode. You saw where they were going with the whole thing, but they liked him so much. And I've heard this throughout his career. I mean, he was the bad guy, Biff, in Back to the Future, and he had to work hard to get out of that stereotype because we all remember Biff being, this meathead dummy guy. I was going to say something else.
The worst, basically.
Yeah, and he in person is just the funniest, best guy to hang around, and he won over the writers' room and the producers to the point where they're like, you know what? And his performance was really good with Nate back and forth on the screen. So they said, we're going to have him do, I guess, a slight redemption arc. So he's not going to be the big bad of the season. They brought in another character to be the big bad, or shifted some things to make the big bad of the season. So I think that's good. It also actually might signal closer to the end of the series where they might have been thinking of ending the series with another bad person down the road, and they're just moving that up. I have no idea. The show's been renewed for another season, so it's not like it's going to end this year or anything, but that could be in their thought process.
Sometimes that happens. People, they have one, he even did the joke, right? Make like a tree and leave.
And leave, which is not what is said in the Back to the Future, is make like a tree and get out of here. But the actual saying is make like a tree and leave. So Nate's like, I don't think that's how that goes, because everybody remembers make like a tree and get out of here, which is completely wrong. Yeah.
Well, I thought this was a fun episode. Chris, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Like you said, it's just fun. I really enjoyed this. My first I stutter all through that. It's my first episode back on Legends in a while, and I'm watching them as we record them right now. So I hadn't seen Legends in ages, and it was fun just to step back into this. Like, oh yeah, this feels like that summer popcorn movie. I'm having a bunch of fun with this. We're talking about kaiju and Godzilla monsters and things like that. This is just a blast. So I really enjoyed just this relaxing action hour of television, for lack of a better term.
SP?
The one thing that grabbed me at the end of the episode was Nora's decision. She decided to help Constantine. Constantine was very direct with her and said, you have to make sure this is for you. It's not for anybody else. It's just for you. And she made that decision. She made that decision that she was going to go back basically in captivity and answer for her crimes, quote unquote crimes. And that starts a whole unique thing, because both Michelle and I have seen further. This is a storyline that's not going to go away. It's a main storyline. So just if this is your first time watching it, just enjoy the ride with Nora. Enjoy what's going on with Constantine too. It's a little bit more serious storyline. But if you're a Constantine fan, like I know Michelle is, it's going to be a fun ride till we get to the mid-season finale.
Exactly. Well, Arrow is still on hiatus, so we're going to talk about Legends next time. That episode is Tender is the Nate. It's season 4, episode 6. It aired Monday, November 26, 2018. Hank Haywood confronts Ava about the spending habits of the Legends. Mona tries to make a good impression with Ava, but her eagerness gets her and Ava stuck in a cell together. Directed by Dean Cho, it was written by Phil Klummer and Matthew Mala.
Live from the Starling Tribune main news desk on floor 52 of the Starling Tribune Tower, it's the weekly news roundup with award-winning chief news anchor Michelle Ely. And now, Michelle Ely.
Well, we have a big piece of Arrow news, and that is the fact that Emily Brett Rickards has decided to leave Arrow ahead of the show's 8th and final season. Arrow showrunner Beth Schwartz said that Rickards, and thus Felicity's exit, is addressed at the end of the season versus, say, in the final season premiere. Schwartz tweeted back on March 19th that she was in the process of writing the finale script, while series lead Stephen Amell shared on March 25th that he had read it. As Schwartz explained to TV Line, we kind of knew going into the finale where Rickards' head was at with regards to her future on the series. Rickards shared the news of her exit via Instagram, which in part said, Felicity and I are very tight too, but after 1 through 7, we will be saying goodbye to you. Shortly thereafter, Schwartz and Arrowverse EP Greg Berlanti issued a statement saying, although we're heartbroken to see both Emily and Felicity leave the show, we're completely supportive of Emily and her future endeavors. She will always have a family at Arrow. So does that closing part of the joint statement mean that Rickards will likely return for at least the sure-to-be grand series finale? Schwartz said, I cannot comment on that.
It might be up to where Emily is in her production schedule next year. If she gets another gig, she could have a movie deal in the midst of filming that. So I can see her non-committal answer. Also, to be kind of a tease, because you don't know whether it's going to happen or not. I think this statement was very interesting because they basically slammed the door on recasting Felicity for the finale season. I think that's a smart move at this point. Going into a half season where you know it's only 10 episodes and done, there's no reason to recast the character.
Well, and it's very tough to recast someone who's been there that long. It doesn't happen and work well in many shows.
Right. So Star Trek DS9, there's an example where an actor wanted to leave the show, and instead of recasting the character, they actually made a change in the character. Doctor Who is famous for that as well, where you change the character into another. It's the same Doctor Who, but it's played by a different person, and it's acknowledged that the person that is now playing it is a different doctor than a previous doctor, but they're all doctor. It's a weird timey-wimey thing. And if you've never seen Doctor Who, you should go ahead and watch a few seasons.
It's something very difficult to deal with when you've got an actor that wants to depart, and recasting. It's tough to make fans buy it. One of the good examples of that is J. Michael Straczynski, who wrote Babylon 5. He wrote his 5-year Bible of everything he was going to do. And every character he introduced had an entrance ramp and an exit ramp, both for planned and unplanned things. So, for instance, the character the telepath from season 1, Andrea Winters, I think it was, I can't remember, or Talia Winters, played by Andrea Thompson. She wanted to leave the show at the end of season 1, and he had big plans for that character, but he had written into his Bible the way to basically write her out and bring someone in to start filling that role from before. And he said he did that for every single character on the show just to try and cover his bases, because like I mentioned, if you recast someone that people are used to seeing on screen for so long, it's jarring and the fans don't like it. They tried it with Last Man Standing, the Tim Allen comedy, and there were a lot of cranky folks at first. I'm sure they've adjusted by now, but I just remember seeing all the posts on Twitter and Facebook and entertainment websites like, this isn't who we're used to seeing in this role. We don't like it, blah, 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 blah. So recasting, I'm glad they didn't go that route, because it would have been jarring, and you don't want that in your final 10 episodes.
I have 2 more comments left on this. The first is they had to have known about Felicity's exit from the show, or Emily's exit from the show, when they were making the story for Star City 2040, because the way that they actually filmed and presented that, it does give Felicity a really good off-ramp, as you explained it, for the next season. So they had to have known going into the production for that episode.
I think you're right. It's interesting, though, because remember, one of the rumors we were hearing is they were talking about an Arrow spinoff set in Star City 2040. So if they're still going that route, it either means that Felicity in 2040 is going to die or go back into hiding or something like that as well. Because if Emily Bett Rickards is off of Arrow, I doubt she's coming back to do the Star City 2040 spinoff if that were to happen.
They have killed off characters in Arrow before, dear characters or close characters. So I can see this happening, of her actually dying in the future, so that they don't have to bring her back. If they do a spinoff in 2040, I can see that.
It's going to be very interesting from a writing perspective to see how they write this and how they set it up. You can argue the fact that, yeah, it sort of makes sense that Felicity might go away, because the only people on Team Arrow that know about Mia is John, Diggle, and Oliver. So she's probably going to disappear somewhere around the time that she's set to give birth, I wager. So they could set it up that when she goes to that cabin, she never leaves because there's something going on and Oliver has to go back and confront it. But I really hope they find a way to at least bring her back for the finale, for the fallout of whatever's going to happen with Crisis on Infinite Earths, because we're getting all of these different characters here. While I'm someone who kind of fell off the Felicity bandwagon and kind of got tired of how they catered to some of that stuff on this show, it's Oliver Queen's wife. You would hope that she's around for what is, we're assuming, Oliver Queen's last sacrifice.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season. That was another thing the last thing I wanted to bring up was Felicity. How do you think that Felicity fans to the show, which are probably the only thing that's really keeping the show on the air now, How do you think Olicity fans are going to respond to this?
They're pissed. That's part of the problem, and part of the problem is those that attack Stephen Amell and Stephen Amell's wife on Instagram because they don't believe in the concept of acting. In some cases, they're like Stephen and Emily are fated to be together. I'm like, they're actors. He's married and has a kid. There's never been any hint of them being anything other than friends in real life, but these people have built this mental drama up, and they're the same people that, like, Stephen Amell's wife posted on Emily Bettrickard's Instagram, commented saying something to the effect of they were going to miss her, something like that, and some woman just starts attacking her on there, like, this is what you wanted because it gets Emily away from your husband and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you guys are ridiculous. That's the problem, is this rabid fan base around the shipping community. It's great for getting the show moving forward. We saw how it started to shift to cater towards that. Whether that was a good thing or a bad thing depends on your viewpoint of Olicity. But the people that can't separate the real from the fake, that's a problem.
I mean, it's not like she appeared for 7 seconds during the whole flashback to the Queen's Gambit, because Sarah Lance was technically recast. Because there was a different Sarah, but that was like 7 seconds.
But didn't they edit that out in later releases of it and change it to be a Katie Lotz?
Yeah.
Yes, they didn't edit it out. They changed the scene, so it's the same scene. It's just got Katie Lotz with, I believe, a wig on.
I think so too.
So of course, when you have someone who's been on the show for 7 years, you can't just replace them for 10 episodes. For the Olicity fans, first off, Olicity will still be Olicity. They have a child together. I think the fans that realize this is a fictional show will probably be okay with it, because technically, you know, their two lovebirds got together and they got married and they had a baby and all that type of stuff. And Oliver's going to go out a hero. And Felicity, I remember in the episode of 2040 where she makes that speech about how heroes have to put themselves and the mission before their family sometimes. And it's almost like written in there right there that, you know, she knows that Oliver is probably going to make some decision because he's the Green Arrow and he's going to do a hero thing.
Yeah. My concern is that in Star City 2040, not once did you see Olicity together. Not once did you see Mia with her dad.
Yet.
And I think that they weren't together. By everything that we've seen from and heard from Mia, it's been that Oliver has not been around. Now, you're right. He could come in. But she was even trained by Nyssa. She wasn't trained by Oliver. So
that's true. The implication I had is that Oliver was dead when it was time for that. Or that's the implication. That's what they are implying and wanting us to think, is that Oliver Queen is dead, especially with the deal he makes with the Monitor and things like that. So it could be that some grand reveal we get at the end of this season is there's the Oliver Queen of the future, but then that would kind of put the Crisis fate as a question mark.
Yeah. The other thing is I'm wondering how they're going to spin this so it goes out on a high note, because you do have him apart from Felicity, because obviously she's not in the next season. And as we've speculated, he made some sort of a deal with the Monitor. So I think they've had this in mind all along, and that they were toying with different things for a couple of months, but in the end they said, no, we can't do it. We have to go along with what our original plan was, which is you're going out at Crisis. So I'm just wondering if they're going to do it to the point where Arrow fans are going to be okay with it. Because we've watched this show for 7 seasons now. I want it to end on a good note. I don't want to How I Met Your Mother this thing.
Ugh. The alternate ending's so much better.
It is. So I will admit it. It is better. And I wish they had other footage other than that umbrella floating around the street. But okay, I'll take it.
Well, either way, you know, I've appreciated Emily on the show. I wish her well. I hope whatever future project she has, she's happy with and, you know, has a long, great, happy career. And that's all I have for the news.
We do have some feedback. We actually have a couple of notes on feedback, which we'll be getting to in the future. But one thing that we have to do is we got to go back to Star City 2040. And P Fruit commented on our YouTube video for that. We haven't gotten to it yet because, well, we were without Michelle. And without Michelle, we're kind of rudderless on this show and all sorts of bad things happen.
It's true.
But she's back and we're going to take the feedback here. So do you want me to read it, Chris, or do you want to go ahead and...
I can go ahead and read this one.
Okay.
So P. Fruit had stated on Season 7, Episode 16, Star City 2040, I believe Night Watch is a branch of the DEO, and if Crisis does what most people expect and merge the worlds, then it would put the Supergirl slash the DEO on Earth 1. I think Dig and Lila are probably running Night Watch. We know Dig's alive because Connor said that his dad was the one that sent him to watch out over Mia. And I would also guess that Felicity handles the R&D for them since Connor's DNA replication device counteracts Archer. Interesting theories for what could happen with a merge here. I hadn't made the thought here that we could be looking at a future post-crisis where things may have been merged. So I like that idea.
Yeah, that's interesting. Argus and DEO kind of combine. I could see that.
Plausible.
Continuing, she said, I don't think Mia ever knew about William growing up. Felicity said in the tape that she avoided ever saying their names in the same sentence. Even when they showed up, the argument between Mia and her mom, Felicity, she said she wanted to make the city better for Mia but cut herself off before saying William's name. I think when Mia did research, she probably realized that the person in the photo with her mom was her brother, so she wasn't very shocked when she met him in Season 7, Episode 13.
I remember reading this in the feedback when she sent it in, and I completely agreed with this. I didn't really think in terms of when Mia found out about William, but since we saw her see the photo and she's such a whiz at everything, she had to have known about William.
Yeah, in some capacity, she knew.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that one. Continuing, P. Fruit says, since Galaxy 1 is a front for Eden Corp, which is probably Dante's company, I'm wondering if Kevin Dale could be his son. They are pushing Legacy very hard by having OTA's kids in the future be just like them.
Yeah, it's the only thing they have left at this point, right? To make the transition, if they were going to make a transition, to have those ties back to the parents in the original series. I see this. P. Fruit's on to some things here.
Yeah, and having Galaxy 1 a front is very Ninth Circle. As I said, I think part of 2040 is ramifications of what the Ninth Circle does in the present.
I think you're right as well. And then finally, P. Fruit wrapped things up saying, I didn't feel any empathy for Renee, and I'm glad both Dinah and Zoe called him out. He has repeatedly betrayed the team and Oliver. Renee gave his identity to Tobias Church, then did it again with the FBI, and now he's willing to work with Galaxy, even after Kevin admitted to playing a part in Felicity's death.
You still want to bring back the Haas, Chris?
I don't want to bring back the Haas.
Because this is making me not want to bring back the Haas. I kind of glanced over it because Renee had been through some redemption arcs, but yes, P. Fruit again pulling out the great things. He has repeatedly and consistently sold out his team. As much of a friend as he is to the team, he tends to go his own route, which may or may not have the best cognitive, creative thinking going on there. So yeah, I'm not feeling any empathy towards Renee, especially after P. Fruit wrote this. And I can't believe we forgot to talk about it because this is the big takeaway from me from her feedback. Yeah, not a Renee fan after reading that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just wondering, it's like, it doesn't surprise me that Renee breaks off from the team and does his own thing. You know, he willingly threw his hat in with Emiko, no matter the consequences, even though with everything. I just wonder what changes him from the street level doing his own thing, Renee, what changes that part of Renee into the suit-wearing corporate lackey mayor Renee? I wonder what flips that switch, because betraying the team, I completely see, but that sort of transformation, I wonder what happens.
It's going to come into something, I imagine, which is Renee has always had more of a focus on saving the Glades than we've seen compared to the rest of the team, which is part of the reason why he teamed up with Emiko when everyone else was kind of taking a hiatus from the vigilante lifestyle. So I imagine his transition to Mayor Renee comes into play somehow with Team Arrow focusing more on Star City at the expense of the Glades yet again, and Renee kind of going back to the fact that, hey, the Glades needs help also. Something they touched on a lot at the beginning of this season. And one thing I think with Renee, yeah, the character's kind of flip-flopped on who he's allied with. I think in part that's because they've kind of sacrificed that character at the writer's altar a few different times to be the mechanism to continue moving something. So it's understandable why people may not care for the character as much now because, hey, he's done some weird flip-flops that don't make sense and betrayed. Yeah, I get it.
Well, he's going out and he's fighting. He's a vigilante, so he's out there at night. Why would he be wearing flip-flops?
Because they're so comfortable. And in the summer, it's so hot.
Yeah, but they're not practical as you're running around.
Practicality, schmacticality.
I mean, they're noisy. You can't really move fast with flip-flops. Ultimately, if you are running in flip-flops, they're coming off. And then you've got bare feet on glass or concrete or something like that. It's not going to be good for a vigilante wearing flip-flops.
I see what you did there. I see it.
Took you a second, huh?
Oh, I'm really slow. I didn't have much coffee today.
Well, P Fruit, thank you very much for the feedback. We always appreciate it. And Chris, we are part of a larger podcasting network, aren't we?
That is right. The Starling Tribune is, in fact, part of the Gonna Geek Podcast Network. If you're watching live, you see my mic flag reflects that as well. There's 20 plus different shows in the network covering a variety of different geeky, nerdy topics, be it specific television programs like we do here, geek culture, video games, tabletop gaming. We've got all sorts of things. And every once in a while, we like to highlight one of the other shows in the network in a specific episode and say, hey, you guys might want to check this one out. And this week, I want to talk to you guys about episode 58 of the Game Life Balance US podcast. Author J. Blake Harris talks Oculus, Facebook, and the VR revolution. This week, Cody interviews author Blake J. Harris, who recently released his new book, The History of the Future, Oculus, Facebook, and the Revolution That Swept Virtual Reality. In this podcast, Harris dives into the dramatic, larger-than-life, true story behind the founding of Oculus and its quest for virtual reality. He also talks about how he got his hands on the story, the twists and turns he encountered, and what's next for virtual reality. So if you've got a bit of an interest in all the different VR headsets that are out there and VR gaming and stuff like that, this is a good episode to check out. Cody has a really good interview here with Blake Harris. So
Cody does a really good job overall. I mean, he is a professional podcaster now, and we still have him on the network running his hobby. I can't imagine doing a podcast for work 5 days a week. Actually, for him, it's 6 or 7 days a week. And then coming home and doing this as a hobby. He really loves podcasting. He really loves gaming. And yeah, I hope to see him soon because I plan to be rolling through Chicago. And it's just great to see him again, him and his hair, because they are two separate entities. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out his show. You'll find out.
And don't forget that he's hashtag verified and a podcast award winner.
Award-winning producer Cody, but that's mostly because of his co-hosts.
It's true.
Yeah.
So guys, go check that out. GonnaGeek.com. Click on the network button at the top of the screen. That being said, it is time for us to start shutting this thing down this week. So a big thank you to everyone who did participate in the chat room over at geeks.live, but also a thank you to those of you that download the audio episode from StarlingTribune.com or catch the video replay at youtube.com/GonnaGeek.
If you have an Amazon device, you can enable our podcast as a skill. Just say, hey, a word, enable Starling Tribune, and you'll have full player control. We also have a Discord server. Lots of good stuff on Discord. Actually, Michelle has been dropping some bombshells of news on there. Of course, you can get all this stuff at your regular places as well. But if you want Starling Tribune specific DC news, like Emily Beck Rickards leaving the show, then come join our Discord channel and you will find out all the great stuff and then have a good conversation afterwards too. And remember, you can always catch us as we record live at www.geeks.live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific on most Thursdays. Actually, in a couple of weeks, we won't be on Thursday, but we'll announce that when we are recording in 2 weeks.
Whatever it takes.
We would love to hear from you. We are the Starlight Tribune on Facebook and Instagram, at Starlight Tribune on Twitter, and you can call us at 612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283. Well, this brings us to the end of another great episode. Any last words before we sign off? At Stargate Pioneer.
Hashtag. Oh, so much good stuff. I didn't keep good notes this week. What are we gonna go with? Okay. Hashtag. I like my porn.
At the Chris Farrell.
Hashtag Flip Flop Hoss.
And I am at Michelle Ely signing off with hashtag 3 boobs are enough. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at gonnageek.com or check out our archive at starlingtribune.com. Visit gonnageek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.